Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So verses 1 to 9. Naiskarmya linked with Ashtanga Yoga and the beginning and advanced stages in Ashtanga Yoga. In verse 1, Krishna again warns that one should not give up work prematurely. Real renunciation means to renounce the fruit of work and the desire for sense enjoyment. While still working dutifully, one may give up work only after sufficient purification through Naiskarmya, because one is comfortable in a particular environment, right? Doing particular work, getting particular results. So the problem actually is not the work. The problem is the results that you get from the work, right? So when those results come, if they keep them for yourself, then that becomes part of your field of activities. You simply increase your material entanglement. Now, if the results then are for Krishna, then that means that your environment that you're in becomes increased in the way of Krishna consciousness, right? You're surrounding yourself more and more with facilities and opportunities for service to Krishna, right? This is the point. So the difficulty is not the work. The difficulty is the result, right? So I say, oh, these dirty karmis, they're doing all this nonsense work. The work's not the problem. It's the result that's the problem. Because the work's the same as anyone else, right? Yes.
But isn't there a lot of work that a karmi would do that a devotee wouldn't do?
That may be there, but the point is that, he's talking to Arjuna as a devotee. So he's saying one should not prematurely give up work. So what does that mean? Being the work that a devotee would do. But the point is any work a devotee would do, karmis would also be doing. Right? Just the mentality is different, so therefore, and that mentality difference means the result. You understand? That's what it means. Because otherwise we think, oh, everything's different. Right? But where does this come from? Where does this concept come from? Impersonalism. Because impersonalism means that spiritual means it's the opposite of whatever's there. Right? Does that make sense? So, the karmis, they meet each other and they have all this superficial, hi, how are you, and this and that. So as devotees, we're spiritual. We don't do that. Right? Yes. So what does that mean? Devotees are uncultured. That's the result. Because we think it's the activity that's a problem. Right? In other words, they're just inquiring for some pleasantness or this or that, whatever it may be. But the point is it's the result that's the problem, not the activity. Right? Now, as a devotee in a purified state, you may have more refined ways of performing an activity. Right? But the point is the principle of the activity doesn't change. Right? Just like if you meet people and greet people, is that a problem? No, that's a standard element of etiquette that everyone follows. Here in the spiritual world, it's standard. So if people are dealing in a superficial way, the problem is that they're not dealing properly with it. Right? Why would it be superficial? It would be superficial because of what results they want to get. Right? Not the activity. So we have to be able to distinguish. Because otherwise, how do you perform karma yoga? Because Naiskarmya means what? Krishna. Yes. So that means as you're dealing, the result changes. Right? Because Naiskarmya doesn't mean no work. Right? Naiskarmya means you're performing the work, but the results are for Krishna. Right? Does that make sense? So it's very important to be able to make that distinction. Otherwise, then, so much of the time as we think, oh, it has to be something different. But it's not different. The principle is never different, because the principle is Krishna. Right? So it can't change. Right? It can't change. Does that make sense? Yes.
Here it says that one may give up work only after sufficient purification through Naiskarmya. Why would one want to give up work?
Let us say you're working to make lots of money to, facility for your family. So at some point will that stop?
Yes.
You understand? So at some point means there's no need for increasing facility.
So the specific work will stop? Or all work in general?
No, it means in other words, we've made a distinction in work between direct and indirect.
Okay, yes.
Right? So the direct work, is it a matter of as you advanced in Krishna consciousness, then you give up chanting japa, or you give up association of devotees, or hearing Bhagavatam, or you know what I'm saying, like that. You give up living in the Dham, or Does that make sense? The direct, that's never given up. The point is it's indirect. Indirect is based on engaging your conditioned nature, right? That's based on your material needs and material desires. So, because those are there, one doesn't give them up, right? One simply does those things, but in the spirit of detachment. It's Naiskarmya. Does that make sense? So, giving that up, then that's what it means. You have to engage yourself, right? You have to keep yourself busy. And one's going to be comfortable doing those activities that one's comfortable at. Right? So being comfortable in that way, then one situates oneself, right? Because it's a situation in which you work. Right? The situation is what you work in. So now it's just a matter of that situation. So, let's see. Yeah, but it's inspired or driven by the conditioned nature. So the point is, as the conditioned nature gets purified, then one gets more nicer and nicer situated in Naiskarmya. Right? So one's performing the activity with no problem, the results for Krishna, doing the works for Krishna. But at some point, it may not be so important to be doing an indirect activity connected to Krishna when it could be replaced with a direct. You know what I'm saying? Instead of, working all day at a job and making money when you don't actually need it because, you don't need to go on that, holiday to the Bahamas and your wife doesn't need, another, 100 saris or, this or that. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, you could spend that time doing service at the temple. You know what I'm saying? Or if it's favorable, you make the money and use it for preaching, like Prabhupada. He would do the business and then maintain the preaching. Point is that it switches. So now instead of it being... So here it's a matter of it's business for the family, but he sees it in connection with Krishna. Right? And then with time, then there's no need for that money for the family, but he uses that money for preaching. But then it may come to the point as he can do more preaching by just not doing the business and spending the time in the field. So then that would be the meaning of giving up the work. But we see it's indirect is given up, never direct. Right?
So that means this whole discussion on Naiskarmya, Karma Yoga is dealing with the indirect activities only.
Basically, it's dealing with the indirect.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the same time is even within indirect, because you still have the difference. See, you have Bhagavat, which is direct. You have pancharatric, which is basically all direct, but there are some support of some things that are indirect, like taking a bath or something like that. It's not, by taking a bath, it's not specifically spiritual. But let's say offering an artik to the deity, that is. Right? But to offer the artik, you have to be clean, so you have to take a bath. Right? So those things will always remain, those indirect, because they're in support of the direct. Right? But now, then you have the next level Krishna talks about, is then working for him. So that means you're taking your conditioned nature and doing that work for him. So it's Naiskarmya, but it's sannyas Naiskarmya. It means it's Krishna's work. So that's like, say, you have an ability for business, but you do a business for the temple to make money to run a preaching program. So it's Krishna's business, it's Krishna's work, it's not yours, but you're engaging your conditioned nature. So that also doesn't need to be given up, unless one could do more service by not running the business. You know, after a while, other people are trained and all that, and that maturity is there, so people would rather hear you speak rather than just you're arranging things. Does that make sense? So in there also, that will just be what's most favorable. So that's not also a problem so much of giving it, because it's already established as that. The next one is where you're working and then giving the results. Right? So now you're dealing with renunciation Naiskarmya instead of sannyas Naiskarmya. Right? Because you're getting it, the results are yours, then you're giving them to Krishna. Right? So it's a lower form of Naiskarmya, but it's still Naiskarmya. Because the results will be given to Krishna. Right? Does that make sense? Then you have, as you go down from that, is that, okay, then you only give part of it to Krishna, or, it gets less and less and less. You know what I'm saying? So it's more for you and less for Krishna. You understand? So the point is, Naiskarmya, trying to get to the point of it's all for Krishna. But it's just a matter of, how that's defined, how that all is. Whether it's direct or indirect. Does that make sense? Yes.
I have a question. If we're working for Krishna, let's say, I have an example, specific. If I'm distributing books, and I want to directly give everything to Krishna, work for Krishna, but I take that money also to maintain myself, to maintain my family, is that considered indirect or direct?
That would be indirect.
But even though it's doing his work.
I think like this, okay, let us say, you're in the kitchen, okay? You're cutting vegetables. So is that cooking? Yes. But technically, you've cut the vegetables, now can you say lunch is ready? Why not?
It's not ready.
What has not happened for it to be ready? The cooking. So technically, cutting vegetables is not cooking. But it's in support of cooking. So therefore, you say he's in the kitchen cooking, and you go in and he's cutting vegetables. You don't say, he's not cooking, he's cutting vegetables. Do you understand? So there's cooking, which is actually cooking, and then there's all those things that allow it to happen, but it's still not cooking. So taking care of the family is not book distribution. But the point is unless, you're taking care of yourself, how will you do book distribution? So that's indirect. Right? Indirect means it's not directly connected to Krishna. Does that make sense? Because one may say, no, but then, we're doing book distribution. But the point is, do you have to be married and have a family to do book distribution? Could a brahmachari do book distribution? Like that. It wouldn't be implausible. Right? It's a possibility, right? Okay, so now does the brahmachari actually have to keep any money to maintain himself? No, he just gives all the money to the temple. The temple takes care. Does that make sense? So he's keeping the money and then taking care of himself, taking care of a family, which is, the family is not necessary for book distribution. Therefore, it's indirect. You know what I'm saying? You have in your house some nice furniture, nice rug on the floor. Is that necessary to serve Krishna? But why is it there? Creates an environment that you're comfortable with. You're comfortable with a certain living standard. right? And so that living standard, then that's not direct. It's considered in consideration of your conditioned nature, right? So, okay, this would be the easiest thing. If it's consideration of your constitutional nature, that would be direct, acting in that. Acting in consideration of the conditioned nature, that would be indirect. Does that make sense? But the point is now you may have it like that. You like aesthetic environment, but now you want to preach. So therefore, if I have a nice environment, that makes it more comfortable for others. You're comfortable in it. Why wouldn't others be comfortable? So then, now instead of just keeping it nice because you like it nice, now you keep it nice because, others will come and it'll be a preaching environment. Right? But it's still indirect because it's in consideration of your need for aesthetics. Does that make sense? But now, something that would be direct, the sannyas is that, means it can be that in the house, but let's say something that's more obvious. Is that, let's say, you like to do aesthetic things, so therefore you decorate the temple. You do the paint, you put up curtains, you fix this and that. So but it's just Krishna's place, it's not yours. Right? So then it becomes direct. But it's in consideration of your conditioned nature. Right? So it's still on the lower level. But it's a higher level than dealing with the indirect. But it's still lower than sarvadharma and parityaja. Because there, it's still, you like to do aesthetic things, what can I do? Hey, I could decorate the temple. So it started from your need. Right? Sarvadharma and parityaja means I want to serve Krishna. And then, okay, so there's so many services in the temple, what can I do? Oh, hey, I can help decorate. Does that make sense? So you're starting from the service and coming back into what you can do it from your conditioned state, rather than starting from the conditioned state and connecting it to Krishna. You know what I'm saying? But the point is it doesn't matter how it works as long as it connects. That's the main thing. So even if it's connecting at a lower level, if one is consistent in that will bring it to a higher level. And then from that level, it'll eventually get to, it's just Krishna, that's the consideration. Does that make sense? Because then you have the support of the nature of the relationship. Like Mother Jashoda, so she likes to serve Krishna, in the capacity as his mother. So that's going to be in consideration of her nature, but the nature is based on her affection for Krishna. Right? So it's not considered as indirect. Right? Because that's coming from, so the nature's here. But our nature has not come because of our love for Krishna. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? We're not born, someplace in the Bronx or something because of our great love for Krishna, like that. And so because that, you put that all together and that came out that you were born, over there, so. You know what I'm saying? Manhattan, maybe, but the Bronx, forget it, like that, Okay, and then there's Jersey, right? Of course. So we won't even talk about that. So,
Next year.
Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Next life. Yeah. So slowly move up, Jersey, then up to the Bronx, and then to the Lower East Side, and then to the Upper East Side. Okay. After many, many births. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
In that example, if Gryhastha devotee distributes books for the temple maintains the family.
Can, if the temple maintains, but then the temple means you have the element that generally a Grihastha is independent, but if the temple is making the facility, then one would have to see that, because the person distributing books, how is he distributing books? In what capacity? You know what I'm saying? What's his capacity? Under what varna? Because we say you've already established the ashram as Grihastha, but what varna is he distributing books? You understand? Yeah, so if he's a Brahmin, then he has to be independent. So that means the temple will give him a donation. to take care of himself. But if he's a Shudra and he's just good at his art is sales, and so he's distributing books, then the temple may just take care. You understand? Directly. It means they'll pay the bills, they'll do everything like that. Or maybe they're doing it as a service to the Brahmin. But the mentality is very, very careful in here. You know what I'm saying? Because the etiquette, this is why it becomes difficult. Because of the lack of that understanding of the etiquette. Because the point is even the temple is paying for everything. For a Brahmin, they don't own a Brahmin. You don't own Brahmins. Brahmins will never be owned. You own Shudras. You don't own Brahmins. But the problem is in the temple, if the consideration is money is all, and because of that you control everything, then what is the temple president? A manager, a Vaishya. Right? So Vaishyas don't control Brahmins. Right? That's the way he can engage himself, because he's dealing with money, he can make the accounts and all that, and keep the temple from going broke. That's why he's the temple president. Right? Because the last temple president, then there was, a debt, and so that's why he's there. Because he's good at raising money, collecting money. It's not that he's there because he's the one that's going to inspire the whole, yatra and everything. He's there because they have to pay the debt. Right? But it doesn't mean he can't be inspiring. Be a preacher. But the point is just because he has money, that doesn't mean etiquette's not there. Because the Vedic system is, he can be the temple president and be the manager of the zone. Right? And be, the one who says what goes on. At the same time is, the Brahmins are independent and he respects them. But you only get that in the Vedic culture. Western culture, there's basically no concept of this at all. It means zero. It means there's only in charge and, how you say, doormat. That's as good as it gets in the West. Otherwise, you look at it. Why are all the fighting and wars and that in European history? Right? You have a king and he's running the kingdom. So why won't the people be happy with that? Why are there revolts? Because they're not dealt with, they're not respected as citizens, as their praja, as their like children. They're just something to exploit. So those who understand that they take care and those good qualities, those are known in a good way. And they're inspiring. You hear about King Arthur, whether he existed or not. But people like that concept. Like that. But others in European history, who's known as a good king? There's hardly any known. Some were a good statesman and ran a good solid kingdom, but it's not necessarily that the citizens were really satisfied, like that. So that's the difficulty. But in the Vedic system, you see, that standard is good kings and taking care. And then you have your exceptions. You understand? So this ability to have a dual aspect of respect, that one can respect one for one thing and another for another thing. You get that, let's say, on the level of, like, say, you have celebrities and all that come together. There, everybody's big, so each one respects each other for what they have. But when it comes to administration and money, then somehow it's very much lacking in the Western culture. So that's why it's so important to be able to take advantage of the Vedic concepts. Because right here it won't work. Point is they're Brahmins, they'll live as Brahmins. You don't have to worry that they'll want more. Right? Shudras will want more. Others have, they want. Brahmins, others have, what do they care? They may want, they may not want. So there's a difference. One you're maintaining, one it's a donation. Like Prabhupada in the Upadeshamrita, I think it's right in the beginning, the first one. You've already come across, how does Prabhupada define book distribution? Oh no, it's in the third verse, I think. Dadati pratigrinati. You're giving knowledge, and the people are happy with that, and giving you a dakshin in reverse. It's not book selling. Right? That's why we use the term book distribution. So some understand it's distributing books. Others understand it as it's an economic thing. That's the point. Book distribution is so universal. Anyone can do it. Brahmins can do it as preaching. Kshatriyas do it because it's righteous work. Vaishyas do it, it makes money. Shudras do it because they have the art. They know how to sell. Anybody can do it. So it's so universal. But you still have to know what you're dealing with. Because if you don't, then people won't stay. Brahmins won't stay. Shudras will drive you nuts. So it's a problem. Yes?
I don't understand. If we have Brahmanical brahmachari, how can he be independent?
But why does a Brahminical brahmachari have to be independent?
But you just said that Brahmanas,
Yeah, but Brahmanas, that's a grihastha. Or even then, even he's a brahmachari, is what's the relationship with, who does a brahmachari work under? Authority, guru, but in what capacity? That's there, full capacity on his side. What is the capacity of the person he works under? No. What's the nature of the person that a brahmachari is surrendered to? The Brahmin. When you go to a gurukul, who's in charge of the gurukul? Right? So that means the temple has to be like a gurukul. It's an educational center in which he is there. So the point is the lifestyle is Brahminical. So they're under the teacher, but it's not economic purposes. It's not administrative purposes. It's training. Right? Because that brahmachari will either remain a Naistika brahmachari, or he'll get married. So if he gets married, he needs the training. Right? If he's going to remain a brahmachari and do that service, then again, he needs training. Understand? So the culture is Brahminical. There is no other, in Vedic system, there is no other culture than Brahminical. There isn't Kshatriya culture, Vaishya culture. No, there's only Brahminical culture. That's why Brahminical culture, Vedic culture, Sanatana Dharma, they're all synonymous terms. Does that make sense? Right? Like that. So it can't be that, temple president thinks he owns the brahmacharis. Because if he thinks like that, then it won't work. Because Brahman's non-possessive. So if he's possessive like that, that immediately drops him from the Brahminical platform. You know what I'm saying? So therefore there's going to be friction. Because that means in the brahmachari, if he is Brahminical, he's actually of a higher nature than the temple president. Though his position is lower. And so unless that position, that Brahminical position is respected by that temple president, at some point it will create friction. Right? And so if the brahmachari maintains his nature as a brahmachari, he'll have no problem. But the temple president will, because he's not respecting Brahmins. How long can you go on in your position not respecting Brahmins? You can say, service to Krishna. How is not disrespecting Brahmins service to Krishna? You know what I'm saying? So many other things are nice, that's why it'll kind of go on. But at some point, your anarthas, what do we say? They're just little sprouts that just stay there permanently. Or what do? They grow. So that means your service, your preaching, the Ratha Yatras, that's your increasing. So the creeper is increasing. But at the same time as you're not dealing properly with the Brahmins, so that's growing also. So unless at some point you pull it out, it will strangle you. You understand? So this is culture. So the point is Krishna consciousness doesn't mean there's not culture. So we accept the philosophy. But the culture we don't accept. Why? Because we don't know what culture is. Right? Because in the Western so-called civilization, was it that famous quote? When Mahatma Gandhi went and visited England, and when he came back, someone asked him, "So, what do you think of Western civilization?" And he said, "That would be a good idea." Yeah. So in other words, in your Western civilization, what is culture? You say someone's cultured, what does that mean?
He has lots of knowledge and distinction.
He has knowledge, distinction. Okay, that's one.
Appreciation for arts.
Appreciation for arts. That's going to be very, very...
Bourgeois.
Huh?
Bourgeois.
Bourgeois. He'll dress nicely. He'll speak nicely. He'll go to the opera. He'll go to the... visit the museum where all the paintings are, go to the Louvre, like this. That kind of thing, like that. Of course, he'll walk around that little triangle out front, right? Like that. But does that make sense? Right? So that's it. So how many people are, by Western standards, cultured? Very few. So that means if you take up Krishna consciousness and leave your conditioned nature as it is, how many people are going to appreciate the Vedic culture? Very few. And of those who do, what are they going to appreciate?
The bit that matches with their...
Yeah, the bit that matches with that. If they were into arts, then they'll look at that. If they were into, dressing nicely, they'll dress nicely. Or they have a nice culture, they'll behave like that nicely. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. What about the rest of it? The whole dynamic between the individuals. That's what has to be learned. So this concept that Vedic culture doesn't work, no, it's the only thing that works. But you have to be smart to be able to apply it into the time, place, and circumstance. That means it's not dogmatic. It's not a matter of it's rigid or just ritualistic. No, the ritual is there to give, a basis on how you'd behave if that ritual can be performed. If not, then what's the principle of the ritual? What is it trying to achieve? Does this make sense? Yes.
Maharaj, along the lines of time, place, and circumstance, how do we reconcile, you say a Brahman is not known, how do we reconcile the apparent need, like within ISKCON, for a GBC or some sort of administrative class, who might be Brahmanas or may not be?
But the point is what is the position? The GBC position is what? What are they supposed to do in this society?
Administer.
Administrate? Has Prabhupada ever called them administrators? Ever?
To govern, it's a governing body.
Governing body. Okay, governing body. But the point is, has he ever used the word administration? No. Who does administration in our society? Temple presidents. So now they're already doing the administration. So what do you need a GBC for?
You see the Prabhupada's teachings are being followed.
Yeah, the standards are being followed. In other words, like this problem we're discussing here. Is the temple president dealing with the devotees in the temple appropriately according to the culture? That's what the GBC is supposed to see. So that means the position of the GBC is Brahminical, not Kshatriya, not Vaishya. It's Brahminical.
I'm thinking more from the aspect of sannyasis, initiating gurus being, pledging allegiance to the wishes or the burdens of the GBC, the collective.
But the point is if it's a body of Brahmins, what's the problem?
It's not a problem, I guess. But isn't...
No, but the point is how did Prabhupada define it? It's a Brahminical committee. It's a committee of Brahmins who are preachers, but at the same time as they know management, so they're able to relate to and give good direction and advice to temple presidents. Just like this, it's the same thing. Who runs the kingdom? The king. But who sees that the king does what he's supposed to do according to the standards, according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra? The Brahmins. Right? So the kings have senior Brahmins who oversee what they do. That's the GBC. And the king is the temple president. So bureaucracy starts with the temple president and ends there. The GBC is not a bureaucratic body. There's no need. It's Brahmins. They're preachers. Brahmins don't need bureaucracy. Kshatriyas know how to use it, but they're not bureaucratic. Vaishyas set one up only because if they have to pay taxes and this and that. Otherwise, they'd rather stay away from it. You have to spend money. So what are bureaucrats? Bureaucrats are Shudras. So Kshatriyas engage Shudras in bureaucracy. But they're not bureaucrats. So if you're a bureaucrat, that means you're a Shudra. It's that simple. It's direct. People may not like it. It doesn't sound good. But that doesn't matter. What is this? It's a rock. Well, what if you don't? That sounds so harsh. It's a rock. Why can't we call it something else? It's like this. But it doesn't change its nature as a rock. So a bureaucrat's a bureaucrat no matter what you call him.
We call it a milky crystal.
Huh?
Milky crystal.
A milky crystal. Slightly dusty milky crystal. Yeah, milky crystal in need of dedustment.
Alright, then the day you're mentioning the Shudra is nothing other than the common people who see on the road.
That's all. The common people. So the thing is, Shudra's not a bad thing. We like to make it out, but why? Who are we making it out from? We're making it out from the Western viewpoint, or from the so-called, Brahmins, the smartas, to put themselves in a higher position. They have to speak badly about, but we don't see in the culture that there's dealing improperly, right? Does Bhishma deal badly with Vidura? Do the Pandavas ever deal badly with Vidura? Do the Pandavas take advice from Vidura? Is he even like protecting them and sheltering them and all that? So what Varna are the Pandavas? Kshatriya. What Varna is Vidura? Shudra. So the point is it's just they're not in that position to administrate. But it doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing in that environment. You understand? It's a very subtle thing. That's what we're saying about the culture. It's more than yogurt or going to the opera. Like that. So it's a subtle thing that it's practical. Was Yudhishthira running an empire? Yeah. The whole world. So now does that mean was he being practical? Or was he all airy-fairy in the sky, all theory? Very practical. So that means it can be. So if we're not able to see it, then we have to study it. We have to try to apply it, practice it, then it will come. Does this make sense? So the practical will come, but where do you start from? Because what is the thing? We have time, place, and circumstance. But what is the philosophy in which we say time, place, and circumstance? What is that philosophy? Think about it. Is it in consideration of the Shastra? Is it in consideration of administration based on religious principles? Or is it based on economics? Right? So when we say, most people say time, place, and circumstance, what their philosophy is pragmatism. Pragmatism is what's the quickest, easiest, efficient way to get something done. No consideration of anything else. If it actually got the work done or it made profit, then it's pragmatic. And if there was any obstacle that was created by some theoretical aspects, then that's impractical. It's like, I want to get this done. And so I just say do it. But if I have to consider that, okay, there's this group of, senior, Prabhupada disciples, and then there's others who have been here in the zone for a long time, like this, and then we have, consideration of, there's, some Matajis who are, doing the puja that we have to take care of, and then we also have our brahmachari. Then that weighs on the mind. I can't just, this is what I do and that's it. I have to consider all these things and balance it. That's the time, place, and circumstance. So when they say time, place, and circumstance, actually means they don't want to consider time, place, and circumstance. So time, place, and circumstance actually means whatever I feel like doing, that's what I should be able to do. So it's not actually, it's smokescreen, time, place, and circumstance. Because it's not actually. Because time, place, and circumstance, what about that? What about that you have a temple there and there's 300 devotees that live outside that are not coming to the temple. Why aren't they coming to the temple? Time, place, and circumstance. That's why. You know what I'm saying? So, the point is if that's your yatra, why aren't they being considered as part of the equation? Because there must, out of 300, there must be some that you are something sincere you could cultivate. Okay, there's a few that, are very political or very bitter or this and that. Then, okay, leave them for now. But, out of that, you at least, find some. But are they considered in the equation? Or is it, no, unless you're in the temple, under the direct authority of the temple president, he tells you what to do, however he likes, and you do it, then you're sincere. That's not time, place, and circumstance. That means the time is, whatever the temple president says. The place is wherever he's saying it. And the circumstances, just whatever it is the way he wants it. It's not actually considering everything. You understand? So that's what the GBC is there for, to see that the temple president is considering all these things and the standards of deity worship, standards of cleanliness, standards of prasad, because standards of taking care of the devotees, the etiquette that's there, the book distribution is there, the preaching, how they're dealing, how they're presenting themselves. That's what the GBC is supposed to do. And if the temple president is doing it, then he's out preaching, opening more temples. Because the point is you can't tell me it takes, 20 million people in New York to run one temple. 20 million people could maintain a lot more than one temple. You know what I'm saying? So there could be temples everywhere. You know what I'm saying? But no, this is my territory from New York all the way up to, Maine. That's mine, like that, And if anybody else is out there, got somebody give a donation, that's my donation. No, but you didn't do it. You didn't do the work. Why? Just because you sit there, it's yours? You know what I'm saying? The king is there, and then somebody gives him charity in his kingdom. Can the king say, it's my donation? No, because charity is a religious act. His control of it, that's management. They're two different things. Control, being the temple president as a manager, that's Varna. But Varna doesn't control ashram. Ashram's the spiritual. The other is the social. So how can Varna control ashram? So these things aren't considered. Why? Because they don't know. And you can only know if you want to know. And only if you see that there's a validity, that you could do something with this and actually develop, you could get more. The management's going like this, but if you understood these subtleties, your management would be even better. Then people are interested. Does that make sense? So we have to remember time, place, and circumstance actually comes from the Vedas. It doesn't come from modern.
I was thinking more of the aspect of, we understand GBC now as it's a Brahminical board. When you say Brahmanas aren't owned by anyone, does that include Brahmanas? So in the sense...
Owned means, it doesn't mean that you feel that because I've given money to the Brahmin, therefore he has to do what I say. No, it's not the money first. It's that they've done something, you're giving dakshin. Right? It's just like, let's say there's a yajna. Right? The Brahmin does the yajna. When do you give the dakshin? At the end. After it's finished. You don't give before. Brahmins won't accept it before. Right? Because it's not a business deal. So that's what I'm saying, is they've done service. So it's not that because you've given money, you own him. You've given for what service you've done, out of respect for the service. Not that I've given the money, now he has to do this for me. There's a cooperation. Brahmins, because they're working according to Guru Sadhara Shastra, there's a cooperation. So that's to be seen, is that the standard of Brahminical culture is there, so that cooperation is there. At the same time as there has to be that respect for that position. Because you can, so in other words, you can have a junior man who is the temple president, and there's so many other senior men in the temple or in the yatra, and he won't have any problem with them because he respects them for their position, but they have to respect him for his. He is the manager of the temple, therefore he's allowed to manage. This idea is that you have a committee that tells the temple president what to do. They've turned the temple president from the position of basically of administrator into that of a manager, a Shudra. So that's bogus. There's no such thing as, Prabhupada said a temple president, not committee. You know what I'm saying? So it's a bogus concept. Who will make it up? People who are not managers. In other words, I say bureaucracy begets bureaucracy. So Shudras will come up with Shudra systems. Does that make sense?
What does bureaucracy mean?
Bureaucracy means where you have an office and you have a bunch of papers and you have some rules and regulations. And basically, things going perfectly means the papers are moving and stuff like that, and people are being, dealt with exactly according to the rules that are there on that paper in front of you. Like that. There's no consideration actually of the person or the time, place, and circumstance. So bureaucracy means the inability to see time, place, and circumstance. Also the ability to actually manage. Like that. It's necessary. You have to have bureaucracy. Right? It's like your accounts office. That's a bureaucracy. Your legal office. All these things are all part of the bureaucracy. But that can't be what leads the temple. You have to have a leader leading the temple. A leader's a person. A leader inspires people. Bureaucrat just gets, specific work done. Like that. Nobody's inspired. It doesn't mean he's doing a bad job. He can be a fabulous accountant and doing his work nicely, but nobody's inspired. But a temple president's a leader. If he's not inspiring others, then he's doing a bad job. Does that make sense? So the idea is that the subtleties of the culture go with the philosophy. Then it works really nicely. Otherwise, if it's not considered, it won't go anywhere. Okay. Thus, in order to attain his goal, the Ashtanga yogi should perform activities. Thus, in order the Ashtanga yogi should perform activities which are not directly connected to his yoga practice. And on the other hand, a bhakti yogi achieves perfection by devotional service alone without the need for separate endeavors. This is so because bhakti, as the topmost yoga practice, is independent and awards the results of all other yoga systems. Srila Prabhupada writes in Renunciation Through Wisdom. Those who are already executing their work for the satisfaction of Lord Krishna are not required to separately perform sacrifices, austerities, or meditation that are not on the platform of pure Krishna consciousness. Previously we explained that a pure karma yogi, a devotee, is automatically a Brahmin, sannyasi, and a yogi. Like a karmi or fruit of worker, he is expert in performing sacrifice and executing his duties. Like a jnani or seeker of knowledge, he is renounced and austere. And like a yogi, he is also detached from the fruits of his work and has brought his senses under control. One who is completely detached from all fruit of work and has become attached to the Supreme Lord, and his loving devotional service is simultaneously ornamented with all good qualities. So all these come in line with, they become devotional service. So, because for the yogi, he's going to be taking his bath and, cleaning his ashram and this and that. But it technically has not really much to do with his yoga practice. It means he needs a clean environment, he needs to be clean, so he's doing that. But if we see it's not connected to what he's doing, you understand? Like that. But for the devotee, he sees Krishna in what he's doing, so it's connected. Right? Remember, the Ashtanga Yoga system is going to connect to the Lord at the last two stages. So that means while you're doing the first 6, it's not. Right? You're inspired by getting to that point, but you're not actually connecting it on the lower level. You're doing Hatha Yoga. You're not meditating on the Lord. Right? Hatha Yoga is so that the body is in the proper health, that you can hold a yogic asana basically permanently. Right? Because before they would sit for 10,000 years or 60,000 years. So you have to be quite good at that asana. Right? So, like that, are you doing pranayama? You're just worried about the meditation on what you're doing. You understand? And that. Then you're going to pull in the senses. Right? Pratyahara. And then dharana, focus on one place, but there's nothing in that place. Then only when that's perfect, then you start jnana. That's the 7th. Then you put paramatma there. At that point, then you can say, now it's touching on the spiritual. And then samadhi means that full absorption. So those 2 parts of it are useful for us. The other 2, we have our own systems. Because will connect those things to Krishna. Right? That will make the difference. So does this make sense?
Right, so that's why the modern yoga practice is basically business and material, because it doesn't touch the 7 and 8 elements much. In the West.
No, it does. I mean, they'll say they're doing meditation, but what are they actually meditating on? Do most yogis give Paramatma to meditate on? No. Like that Brahman at best, maybe you look at the doctor, maybe some color, or think of a nice field, and butterflies and deers, and, so who knows? But it's not actually connected, and the purpose is just health. So it's not actually Ashtanga yoga. The Hatha yoga, they're just doing the exercises, but even then, it's not that focused. Or they'll add some pranayama and like that. So I think that becomes Kriya yoga, like that, or Raja yoga when you add like that. But they'll never get the pratyahara. Pulling in the senses, they'll never. Even in pranayama, they just use it to, for health. So it's actually just a support for the hatha. Because actually the perfection of pranayama is you stop the breathing. The ingoing breath and the outgoing breath merge into each other and the breathing stops. Because as long as the breath is moving, the mind is disturbed. Right? That's why in pranayama, then as you advance, then you practice this holding it. You breathe in, hold it. Breathe out, hold it. Right? So you're breathing in 1, holding for 4, breathing out 2, then holding for 4, breathing in 1. So we see the holding in or out is longer than the breathing in and out. You understand? Because you're trying to get to the point where then you increase that until you stop the breathing. Does that make sense? Because that's difficult to do. I don't know if you know anything. There's the lotus where you put your hands crossed behind your back and hold your toes. That one's specifically for when you stop the breathing and the body doesn't really like that. It bounces around. So that keeps you in position. You won't hurt yourself. You won't go out of your asana. Because you're trying to stop the breathing altogether. Now, you hear these yogis, you bury them in the ground for three weeks and stuff like that, because they've stopped the breathing. It's kumbhaka yoga, but, Prabhupada mentions the frogs do that. The frogs in the winter, they dig themselves in a hole in the ground and stop the breathing. So they're actually, kumbhaka yogis. And then, in the spring again, when it warms up, then they, start breathing again, come out and hop around. So, they may be 2 months or 4 months, just, stop the breathing. So it's like, frogs are great yogis, so it's no big deal. That's the thing that makes such a big deal out of it. Does that make sense? So that's the point. So the devotee, then we're saying he doesn't need these separate endeavors because whatever endeavors he has are connected. So when he performs activities, he says, like a karmi, a fruit of work, he's expert in performing sacrifices and executing his duties. So for others, that's separate than, actually the purpose. But he does that and is connected to Krishna. The jnani, he's a renounced seeker of knowledge. Right? He's renounced and austere. So he has knowledge and all that. And, he's renounced, he's austere, he has knowledge. Like that, but that's all connected to Krishna. Right? Austerity means performing your prescribed duties. Right? And like a yogi, he's detached from the fruits of his work and has brought his senses under control. So his senses are controlled for Krishna. Right? So these are the subtle points where we keep bringing back the example of how you say, the karmi's cooking, the devotee's cooking. The difference is not in the cooking. Right? The difference is in the result. That's where you look. Because what's the problem with the fruitive worker? Right? He's giving in charity. He's getting up in the morning. He's taking his bath. He's dressing nicely. Then he's giving in charity to the Brahmins. Performing a yajna. What's the problem? The result is to elevate himself to the heavenly planets or get material facility here. Right? But the devotee would do the same thing. Right? The jnani, he's renounced, he's austere, he studies the scriptures. What's the problem?
He wants to find Brahman. It's personal, it's selfish.
Yes, he wants to merge in the Brahman. So the result's the problem. And the result's his. Right? Right? Even for the fruit of it, the result's his. Right? He gets some material facility, he gives that to Krishna, there's no problem. So that's the devotee. Right? Or the yogi, he controls the senses. Right? He's detached from the fruits of his work, he's controlled his senses. What's the problem?
He's doing it for himself. To get to that platform.
Yes, he wants to merge with the Lord. So that's the problem. So in other words, we see as the work isn't the problem. Because it's authorized work. Right? In other words, authorized work's not the problem. The problem is what it's for. Does that make sense? That's the difficulty. So if that's seen, then that's what's going to naturally bring it into the fold of under scriptures. Right? Because you're doing something, and it's not according to scripture. You're cooking or this or that, and but the principle of cooking doesn't change. But because you're cooking for Krishna, then you're considering of Krishna, therefore you don't taste it, you're clean, you do all these things, you don't mix the bhog and the prasad and all those naturally come. Right? So if it's seen that the activity stays the same, but the consciousness changes, then what needs to change in the activity? In other words, the arrangements, that may change. But the principle of cooking doesn't change. Right? This is a subtle point. That's why Arjuna is confused. Because he's thinking, okay, if I'm spiritual, then it will change from me being a Kshatriya on the battlefield and fighting to something else. But it doesn't. It's not that now he's a devotee, he holds his bow and arrow differently, instead of holding it this way, he holds it backwards, it looks good in the camera or something like that. Or, you know what I'm saying? It stays the same, but what changed is his consciousness. Now those elements of karma are connected to Krishna. Right? But he's seeing it through knowledge. So that's the jnani. Right? His senses are controlled. He's meditated upon the Lord. He's detached work. Therefore, he's a yogi. You see? So this is what Krishna is trying to get at. But the problem is so we're so used to karma or jnana that the work that you combine the two, it's just before devotional service, it just doesn't happen. Even if they say it's happening, it's not happening. So that's why it's even though it's so simple, it's actually it's difficult to absorb, because for the unlimited lifetimes we've been in the material world, we've never done this. It's either we've been karmis or jnanis or yoga. We've never actually combined them. And not only that, for the purpose of pleasing God. That's definitely never been done before. Does that make sense? Yes.
What applies to the karma yogis automatically Brahmana?
Yes.
That's somehow considered being Shudra, Vaishya, just kind of level.
What makes a Brahmana a Brahman? Factually. It's guna and karma, okay? But what makes his guna and karma different?
He's looking for Brahman.
He's looking for Brahman. You understand? Now, by looking for Brahman, and because of the nature of detachment and all that, therefore he does yagyas and teaching and, deals with law and things that others wouldn't deal with. As is the conditioned state. But the principle that actually makes him a Brahmana is seeking Brahman. Right? That's why we can say the Vedic culture is Brahminical culture. Because factually, the Kshatriyas, Vaishyudras, everybody's seeking Brahman. It's just a matter, their activities are more or less direct, inherently on the conditioned platform. Right? It means Kshatriyas is based on the scriptures, but it has to be practically applied. If it's not practically applied, Kshatriyas aren't interested. Right? Vaishya is simply to make money, but where does that money go? Right? That money will go to, given in taxes to the kings, that they'll create the environment, right? The safe environment, and will be given in charity to Brahmins, right? Naturally, you'll take care of the Shudras. Right? So in that way, indirectly, so it gives it to the Brahmanas, that's a direct. But otherwise, the others are indirect. And the Shudras, they're assisting the other three. So in other words, the Brahminical culture goes on because of the Brahmins and Kshatriyas. Like that. Right? But it needs the economic support and the mass to run it. Right? You're carried around by your legs. Everything goes on because your stomach digests things and distributes the energy. Does that make sense? So in other words, the Brahman platform is what makes him a Brahmin. Now, what is the supreme Brahman? Krishna. So in other words, if someone is worshipping Krishna, he's automatically a Brahmin. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't engage his conditioned nature. Right? So someone may be a Shudra by conditioned nature, so he will do activities of a Shudra, but he's actually a Brahmin because of his understanding of Brahman. You understand? So that means in Varna, he'll be definitely doing Shudra activities. But in Ashram, he may be doing Brahminical activities. You understand? Because Ashram technically is Brahminical. Right? But, the Brahma, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are engaged in that system. But the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, that system is Brahminical. Like that. Because you go through training to understand Brahman, then you practice that in your Grihastha life, then you retire and pull back from that, prepare yourself for, going beyond that. Sannyas is then in that dedication to that. Does that make sense? So, in ashram, they're Brahmins, because that's what the spiritual understanding. But they're doing the work of a Shudra. So he goes to the office, and the boss tells him, hey, get these papers ready and this and that. He does that. He doesn't go, hey, I'm a Brahmin. You can't tell me. You're just Vaishya. No, he's acting in the capacity of a Shudra. So he does that, but he's remembering Krishna. Well, his boss, who's a Vaishya, supposedly in a higher position, is not. Or he may be. That means that when you're doing considerations of Varna is considered. But when it comes to ashram activities, like who gives the Bhagavatam class? Do we say only someone who's a Brahmin? No, they could be a Shudra. But they could give the class. Who worships the deity? Who's someone who's second initiated. They may be a Shudra by nature, but they worship the deity. Right? Is that who does book distribution? Who preaches? So on the ashram side, there's no consideration. It's who's qualified does. I'm saying if the Shudra nature is so strong and is so attached to it that therefore they can't be steady in their devotional activities and that, then no, they're not giving the class, they're not worshiping the deity. But that's because of their spiritual lack of qualification, not because they're Shudra. Right? As we said, Vidura, he's a great devotee, but he's a Shudra. Does that make sense? So there's a distinction between Varna and Ashram.
So now how do we recognize these natures?
How do you recognize the natures?
See, everyone is, because we all think of Krishna, we are Brahmas, but also...
But Brahman is a level of consciousness, but what work you can do. Just like, who do you have cook lunch? Huh? Anyone. We take, Bhakta Jose, the only thing he's ever done with a lighter is light, a joint or something like that. So we send him into the kitchen, right? Isn't it? Or would you send someone who knows how to cook? Okay. Who drives the car? Anyone, because we're all devotees, we're all... You understand? So in other words, who has the material skill does that particular activity. But because of the consciousness, then they're doing it for Krishna, so therefore they're a Brahmin. So the two work at once. Right? As a devotee, you're doing everything for Krishna. But at the same time, is whatever is your material ability and skill, that's what you do for Krishna. You understand? Then things work very nicely. So in other words, let's say Shudra. So let's say, but he's a good devotee, and you need a cook, and he can learn cooking. Then he can cook for Krishna because he's cooking from his level of consciousness, the Brahman. But he's able to cook because as an artist, cooking's an art. So therefore he can do it. But if you told him as an artist, okay, then let's say manage the accounts, he could learn that. Because it's an art. But to run a business, he couldn't do. That's not an art. That's a science. So he couldn't do that. Be an administrator, he couldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? And then, let's say, deity worship, he can do. But then, how much he's situated on that level of consciousness. So he can come into an artik and then go away. But would he be able to be a full-time Bajari, where 7 artiks a day and offerings and dressing the deities and waking them up, putting them to sleep? Could he do that day in, day out, for years? That he may not be able to do. You know what I'm saying? Especially if the results that come from that are very minimal. Does that make sense? So you have to consider what is the conditioned nature. What is the ashram they're situated? How much does their material conditioning affect their devotional, understanding? In other words, balance between their spiritual development and their material attachment. What's the nature of that material attachment? And then put all that together, and then you find a position. But it's not rocket science. But the point is it just has to be understood. It works. Oh no, but we're not. But the point is you're still the body. The body still exists, and we act according to it. We can say, I'm not this body, but I guarantee when prasadam time happens, that devotee's there. You know what I'm saying? He's sleeping. Like that. They want to get married, or they are married, so they have to hang out with their family. So, but if we don't need to do any of those. No, but don't be so fanatic, like that. Devotees beyond the rules, but you're following them all. You know what I'm saying? So, if you have that mentality, that person you can never teach Varnashram. Why? Because they can't actually understand the devotional process. They understand the essential: chant Hare Krishna, serve Krishna, and so that's enough for them. That's good. But that person should never be in a leading position, unless the leading position doesn't require these things. Okay, lead a kirtan or something else they can do. They can manage as long as someone else is seeing to the spiritual welfare of the devotees. But otherwise it's going to be a problem, because they can't actually accommodate the culture of Krishna consciousness. Like that. Is that okay?
So it's actually the managers or leaders' job to actually recognize.
Yes, so if they're not trained in it, they don't recognize it, because they don't recognize that. That's why there's 5 devotees in the temple and 500 living outside, simply because of this one point. The point is, you can't see your nature, you can't see anyone else's. Because what's our process?
Self-realization.
Self-realization, not others' realization. It's self-realization. So if you can't see yourself, then how are you going to inspire others? That's all. Why did the person move out? Because he's doing book distribution, saying it's too difficult for him. I want to be able to do something else, stay in the temple, maybe do puja or do something else. No, just surrender. And then what happens? Then he goes away. He moves out. Then he's gone. Then what does the temple president say? Oh, he wasn't sincere. Who wasn't sincere? That's the problem. And then after so many years of that, the temple president goes away. And now according to his theory, he wasn't sincere. But he'll consider he's very sincere. So that means then the others may have also been sincere. So the point is people aren't engaged according to their nature. You know what I'm saying? How do you know if someone's engaged? Because they're still there. How many places you still have? You can go around in our movement and find places. There's devotees that have been doing that same thing forever. There's still some devotees that have been doing book distribution from the 70s or 60s. They're still doing it. They maintain themselves that way. They're grihastas, they still do it. They're nicely situated. You have temple president. They've been there. I think it was at San Diego. The manager been there since the 70s. So you have like this. You know what I'm saying? You have intellectuals. They're situated. They've been doing that forever. You know what I'm saying? Gopi Paranadai. He's been translating. Since he's still doing it. Jayadvaita is still editing. So that means that's their nature. It's a situation. So that's the point, is that you find that, they'll do it forever. You don't find it, they'll go away. And because they're not trained, they may not be able to find it themselves. And so they're not happy, and the temple can't help them, so then what's going to happen? So you have to be able to, because the point is that some are going to live in the temple, some are not. But whatever they're going to live, they're all connected. You know what I'm saying? You take a community like Chopati, 5,000 people. Right? We're not talking 500 here, 5,000. They're all connected to the temple. Why? Because they're all acting according to their nature. Does that make sense? So that's why it's imperative to understand this. If one doesn't, it won't work. Right? So you have to be able to balance what is the conditioned nature and what is the spiritual nature. And within the condition, so the spiritual nature, how advanced? Kanista Madhyamuta. And then in the conditioned nature, what is the nature? What varna, what ashram do they need to be situated in? Does that make sense? Okay. Another implication of verse 1 is that one should strive for proper activity, as well as the proper mood behind it. A person who is attached only to the external designations is called a pretender. Bhagavad Gita 3:6. Right? On the other hand, a great soul who is in perfect consciousness is not dependent on the external situation. 3:17. Although he may decide to follow the rules in order to set a good example. 3:20. Right? So proper activity means, and the mood behind it, the two that go together. So a pretender here is being defined not in that he's just making some clever trick to get something done. That's so, like a, second-hand car salesman or something. But we're talking about, here he's performing the rules, and maybe sincerely, but he doesn't have the right mood. So it'll be a pretender. Because the two go together. Because when we say guna and karma, guna means the mood. Karma means the actual activity. So that's why I say guna and karma. He has the mentality of a Brahman, and he's performing the activities of Brahman. Right? Or he's the mentality of a Kshatriya, he's performing the activity. Or he's a Grihasta, he has the mentality. You know what I'm saying? So we have to see that it's, otherwise it's not right. The guy's a brahmachari, he's always, thinking about, the girls and trying to check things out like that, tries to be independent, doesn't really, work nicely under the authorities and all that. So he does the activity of brahmachari, but he's a pretender, because he doesn't have the mentality. Then that same brahmachari eventually gets married, but now, once he gets married, now he's all renounced. Like that. So, he only goes home when he wants something to eat, something else, like this and that. And so, but now he's a pretender, because he doesn't have the mentality. You know what I'm saying? And then, eventually, he leaves all that, becomes the vanaprastha, and all that, instead of controlling it, he's just trying to be, famous and known and respected and all that. So, you understand? So the problem is that their inability to match the mood with the activity. Does that make sense? So that's the problem. So they have to match, otherwise they're a pretender. Yes.
Why is there that tendency to not match the mood and the activity?
Because if you match the mood and the activity, means one, you have to be responsible, then you have to endeavor. It's just like this. If you're a brahmachari, and a good brahmachari then what do you have to do? You have to follow the authority. You have to surrender to taking the responsibility of following the authority. Now, as a grihasta, what happens? You're the authority in this, but what's the common point? You have to surrender to looking after your dependents. So in other words, it's just reversed. But why did I say the person who's not a good brahmachari won't be a good grihasta? Why? Because in each one they're trying to get out of their responsibility. As a brahmachari, why be so fanatic? But as a grihasta, I should be austere. I should be renounced. Not austere, but renounced. But renounced means renounce from taking care of my family. Renounce doesn't mean renounce of good food or sex or those that's not that. Come on, that's grihasta life. It's like that. But these other things, actually taking care of the family, then that's another thing. So that's why you see this is, what I'm saying? They missed the point. So they're not surrendering. They're not surrendering to their duties. That's why this point of duty keeps coming up. Right? Expert in performing sacrifice and executing his duties. So that's the karma yoga aspect of Buddha yoga. He's expert at his duties. You know what I'm saying? Because if someone's a good brahmachari, everyone appreciates it. If someone's a good grihasta, everyone appreciates it. So you can say, well, that's contradictory. No, because it's well done. Right? The grihasta takes care of his family very nicely. They're all satisfied. They're all being Krishna conscious. Everyone's going to say, hey, this is good. Or the brahmachari, he does his service and that. Everybody likes him. He works nicely with everybody. He's not interested in any material facility. Everyone will say, this is nice. They'll be inspired. So that means any varna, any ashram done nicely is inspiring. And then the devotee does that for Krishna. So then that makes it, actually spiritually inspiring. Does that make sense?
Right, so now we get
you...
Lawrence, does the Varna Shankara have a natural inclination towards one mood, a different activity?
Does a Varna Shankara have a natural proclivity towards one mood and another activity? On one sense, you could say yes, because that's the meaning of a Shankara. Shankara means mixed. So Varna Shankara means mixed Varna. You have Ashram Shankara, what the examples we were giving there, that's Ashram Shankara. Like that. So there'll be a mix, but the common point is the self-centeredness of just doing what they like that. So that's why they can't follow the rules of the particular varna. And they want this and that and all things. So you get the thing. So basically it comes down to the guna and the karma aren't matched. Right? Because basically speaking, technically is the mother gives one, the father gives the other. Right? The mother basically is the guna, the father is the karma, or vice versa as it is. Like say, if you have a Brahmin father and a Kshatriya mother, right? It's analoma, but it's only 1 degree, so you don't create Varna Shankara. But the son will generally naturally be a Kshatriya, because they'll take on the mood of the mother. But if it's 2 degrees, then you have a mix, because the Brahmin, if it's 2 degrees, it won't work. But if it's reversed, pratiloma, where the father's a Kshatriya, mother's a Brahmin, then you actually get a mixed Varna. Then you get a Sutta. And so they may be, in the highest level, they may have Brahminical, or they may be a Kshatriya, or they may be a chariot driver, or they may be a small-time hunter. Not a big-time, small-time. These are what can happen. Because we even see, even the nicely done, like, I think it was Bharat Maharaj. He had 100 sons, or Rishabdev had 100 sons? He had 100 sons. So of those 100 sons, so he's Kshatriya, his wife's a Kshatriya. We don't hear anything other than that. But of that, then 11 sons were Paramahamsas, so the Brahmins are beyond. 9 were Kshatriyas. And, no, excuse me. 11 were Paramahamsas. I don't remember. But basically you had, most of them were, can't remember how it worked, but only, sorry?
It was Rishabh there.
Rishabh Dev. But do you remember what was the breakdown of the kids? Because I remember there was 11 and 9 and then 80.
Yeah, 81. They were rulers of different planets, and 9 were the Kshatriyas.
Mm-hmm.
How do you say? The topmost Paramaras.
Okay, so they were like emperors in that. And the others were just general Kshatriyas.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 11 were Paramahamsas. Okay, so you see, as even from there, you'll get that.
9 Yogendras at most.
The 9 Yogendras, those are the Nava Yogendras.
Yeah, and 81 were the general.
Oh, okay. Cool. So here is the Kshatriya, but you might get, minimally you get Kshatriya, and then they might be above that because of the quality of, but generally you wouldn't get below. But when they're mixed, then you'll always get lower. And when you mix the mixes, then it gets worse. Like that. So when the devotee said, so Prabhupada, what are we? What Vard are we? It's about the mixes of mixes. So it's like, yes.
Is there a connection between Sutta and, for example, Sachi Sutta? Or is that different?
Sutta and Sachi Sutta. Sutta can be poet or, a speaker like that. But here I think Sutta means son. Like that. So there must be a difference in something in the what's long and short, or the kind of letters that are there. So that's a different thing. But that means son of. But here Sutta means like Romaharshan Sutta, Ugra Shravas Sutta, that are speaking the Puranas. Like that. So they're good orators. Yes.
Let's summarize. Before we said that Bhakti was the top, but something aloof from all the other elements. But here it's very clear that we had all of them. We take one characteristic from each. So that's
yes. Yeah. Bhakti is the full circle. Then within it has your activities, because it's body, mind, and words. Right? So karmi deals with what? The body, right? Then who's the words? The jnanis. And who's the mind? The yogis. You understand? So body, mind, and words. So like the karmi, the body is engaged in the activities and do it nicely. But it's for Krishna. It's Naiskarmya. Yeah? Like the jnani, then one is renounced and one is seeker of knowledge, but it's for Krishna. Right? And like the yogi, then the mind is fixed on Krishna. Does that make sense? So when we say body, mind, and words, it includes the karmi, jnani, and yogi. So that's the thing. It's part of. It's not separate. We make this separation. We can study them separately so that it becomes clear. But that's why we see immediately it's moving from one chapter to the next, because the idea is it doesn't stay separated. Because if you can only accommodate one, then the point is because it's connected to Krishna. So connecting the body to Krishna is still connected to Krishna, even if the mind and intelligence aren't. But it's still perfect because one's connected to Krishna. Right? So now if you can connect 2 of that, that's better. To connect all 3, that's the best. Does that make sense? So you're trying to connect body, mind, and words. So now you know what body means, then you take that aspects from the karma. And the intelligence, you can take those out. Because the intelligence means, when we say words, that's the senses. Right? So intelligence, senses go together. That means, so from the jnanis, we're austere, we're renounced. We have knowledge. But the senses are engaged, like the karmi. But the senses are controlled, like the yogi. You understand? So you have all that aspect together. They're controlled, right? One's detached from sense enjoyment, one's renounced. And so that means that the karma of engaging the senses, the result is for Krishna. So that means that's why there's no difficulty wherever one's situated. It's whatever is comfortable right now for the person, that's what they should be doing. Does that make sense? And then it works. So that's why you don't see a discrimination, in the Lord's pastimes between those who are renounced, those who are grihastas, those who are this or that. It doesn't matter. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was a grihasta. Haridas Thakur, he was not. You know what I'm saying? So, but they're all, seen from that platform. The great devotees. Advaitacharya was a grihasta. Srivas Thakur was a grihasta. Nityananda, that's, hard to say what he is. He's an avadut. Like that. So, that doesn't matter. It's whatever is the best situation for your mentality, that's where you should be situated. Does that make sense? So that's the thing. If you know that, these things will work. Does that make sense? Yeah. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary to verse 1, he performs actions prescribed by the scripture as inescapable duty, karyam karma, without expectation of results, anashrita karma phalam, is called a sannyasi, since he renounces the results of his actions. He is called a yogi, since his mind does not dwell on the enjoyment of objects of the senses. A person who merely renounces duties such as the fire sacrifices is not called a sannyasi, nor is the one who merely half closes his eyes without external bodily activity. A kriya is called a yogi. Right? So in other words, the duty is inescapable, means you can't not do your duty, because that is what's prescribed for that nature. So you do that, but not expecting the results. That's sannyas. So in other words, sannyas is the standard of devotional activities. Right? That's the standard. So everybody can act on that platform. No matter what their position, whatever varna or ashram they're in. But at least minimum, if they don't come to that mentality earlier, at least then at the end of life when there's sannyas, then hopefully one will come to that mentality. You understand? So that's mechanically, at least there. But actually by consciousness, one can be sannyas right from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, why was Prahlad Maharaj great? Right? Because he's a sannyasi. You understand? His mentality is that. But he's a kid, living in his house and going to his, demon gurukul. Like that. So, so you could say, what's so renounced about that? But he didn't do anything that wasn't connected to Krishna. Pariksit Maharaj, he was sannyas while he was in the womb, right? Like that. You know what I'm saying? So, therefore, the externals aren't what's important. It's that consciousness. But at the same time, the externals are important here, as the Acharya mentions, is that karyam karma. It's inescapable duty. Right? Does that make sense? So, beyond the rules means you're not doing it because you're forced by the rules. You're absorbed in Krishna. So you're actually perfectly following the rules. So if you're able to do that service or not, your service or your performance of duties is perfect. Right? Because it's connected to Krishna. Well, someone else, they don't do that particular karmic activity, then there's a fault in their karma. You understand? But if it's done on the devotional platform, then if one's able to do it, nice. If one's not able to do it, still, the point is the real activity is devotion to Krishna. So that's the Sanatana Dharma. That's the real duty. Is this making any sense here? Yes.
Is there any difference between mentality and consciousness?
Mentality and consciousness. In this case, mentality would be based on consciousness. They basically be, in application, they would be non-different. Because you have a consciousness, and from that you're going to take the variety of your character and connect that to the consciousness. So what particular aspect is manifesting, that will be according to your mentality. Now you're enthusiastic, or now you're very meditative, or now does that make sense? But it's all based on the consciousness of Krishna.
Now if somebody, going back to this one as much as somebody has the mentality of particular Brahma Lashon, then he does these activities.
Yes, and he'll do the activities.
But on the level of the consciousness, he may be different.
Yes. See, the point is someone can be a bona fide Brahmin by guna and karma and not be a devotee. It means, in other words, they are following all the rules nicely, they have the proper mentality, they do everything. But that's, that will be a lower level of Brahman. Then one who is seeking after Brahman, on the higher level, means directly looking for it, that will be higher.
And then he's also a sannyasi on the level of consciousness.
That's only if what he's doing is for that higher purpose. In other words, you can have a karma kandi Brahman, and he's a good Brahman. But he's interested in, what facility he'll get in the future. So there has to be some element of Naiskarmya, because he's doing the work and getting nothing now. He'll get in the future. But the Naiskarmya is not on that, and there's, so that means sacrifice, voluntary giving up something for a higher purpose, or for another person, so for a demigod or like this. But it's not the ultimate sacrifice. The ultimate means who you're giving it up for is Krishna. Does that make sense? And the results are not only just now for Krishna, but in the future for Krishna. Well, here now it's not for himself, but in the future it'll be for himself. Does that make sense? So that's why when devotees would sometimes too much criticize the Brahmins, and Prabhupada says, no, they're real Brahmins. And us as Malechas aren't in a position to criticize them. Because they are clean, they are all these different things. But the point is what are we criticizing in a smarta? His goal's not right. So we're not criticizing that he follows Shastra, that he takes his baths 3 times a day, that he does all his Brahman karma. That's not our criticism. Our criticism is that he's following all that and not understanding the purpose of the Shastra, which is to know God. That's our complaint. Right? And they're doing it to go to the heavenly planets or whatever. And for all that work, they could go back to Godhead. So we'll say it's a waste of time. So we're not attacking the culture. We're attacking the philosophy. Does that make sense? So in other words, the consciousness. That's the problem. Like that. But the mentality may be very dutiful and good Brahman. So there may be much to learn. Like Chanakya is not known of as a devotee. Right? But the point is his mentality of a Brahman and his nature as a Brahman, that's worth learning from. Especially if you're dealing in the realm of administration. Like that. Then there's a lot to gain. But even if not, there's still something to gain. Does that make sense?
So in this way, based on the consciousness, the mentality changes, and then the activity.
Yes. Like that. So the consciousness is to enjoy, but the mentality is through piety, so therefore he's a Brahmin, right? The consciousness is to enjoy, the mentality is sinful, so therefore, he may be doing something else. Does that make sense? Yes. Because my peripheral vision doesn't seem to be as developed as we never spent much time in pubs, so we haven't developed. That's it.
The stages of Anamoya, this describes levels of consciousness?
Yes. So we're trying to bring the consciousness from, self-centered to extended to religious to the, pursuit of liberation to transcend to actual, devotional service. But the point is, because devotional service includes everything else, we don't have to go through Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, then Bhakti. We can just go directly to Bhakti. Right? But the point is the whole cultural process starts from Dharma. Right? Artha and Kama and Moksha are based on Dharma. So therefore, it means we're cultivating the how you say, the Anandamoy consciousness, the Krishna consciousness, at the same time performing our duties according to Dharma, because Dharma means you're going to engage your nature in the Lord's service. Right? That's Sanatana Dharma. So how do you define what's your Dharma? So that's what the scriptures give. Otherwise, then we have to speculate and make up our own Dharma. Does that make sense? Is that? But the ultimate point is that it's service to Krishna. That's why sometimes things may go out of whack. Like there was, I think it was Trivikram Maharaj wrote to Prabhupada about, as a sannyasi, it's so difficult, having to worry about all the money at the temple and this and that, because I think he was in Hong Kong, or he would always, or Korea, he'd always end up, he had the inclination to take up preaching in out-of-the-way areas that no one was doing. So he always ended up basically in the Orient or something. And so he was, complaining, sannyasi has to do all this money because, you're out there, it's a new project, you don't have anybody, So you have to do it yourself. And Prabhupada says, no. It says daily, I'm going to the bank, I'm doing all these things. What's the problem? Because you're doing it for Krishna. So the essential element is that, the sannyasa is the preaching element, that you don't have any encumbrances other than preaching. They're saying the grihastha, he has to deal with money, but then the family's involved in everything, so that's encumbrances. So that's there. But so it's not the problem dealing with money. The money is if it's for Krishna, then it's not a problem. Just as the grihastha can see everything he has in connection to Krishna be sannyas, so the sannyasi can also be involved in dealing with money. But that's not his drive, dealing with money. Right? That's just something he does in the performance of his duties. He has to preach, and so you need money, so therefore you have to use a bank. Does that make sense? So there will be these elements that don't quite look right. So devotees will make the mistake, they've changed the rules so we can change anything we like. No. The detail has been adjusted, but the principle never changes. So the principle of sannyas, this principle of sannyas is supposed to be what do we say? Indifference. So if he has money or doesn't have money, that's not going to bother him. If he has money, he spends it for Krishna. If he doesn't have money, then he doesn't. You know what I'm saying? But a grihastha, he can't be indifferent. He has to take care of the family, so he has to have that money. You know what I'm saying? He's dealing with the family. They don't eat nice and they're not comfortable. Then you don't develop the finer, all this. So sannyasi eats nice, doesn't eat nice, doesn't matter. He has a nice place to stay or not. Right? But if you have, let's say you want to go to Delhi, right? You go down to the train station, you buy just a ticket, you have no reservation, you hop on the train. Right? And if you can get something there, great. And if not, you end up sleeping in front of the bathroom. Like that. Okay. Now, if you had your family with you, could you do that? No. That means you have to beforehand have all the things booked, all this and that, all the arrange for prasad, this. So you have to do it. That's just the way it works. Well, the sannyasi doesn't have to. So this time he's, sleeping on the floor, outside the bathroom. The next time, they're flying him, to wherever it is and picking up with the car. But it doesn't matter. You understand? So indifference is the main thing. Well, the grihastha then is engaging the senses. So that means then he's seeing all this. This is duties, how you have to deal with the family. This is how Krishna wants it done. So he's doing it. So he's engaging the senses. But he can do it to please Krishna. The result's not for him. So he's not doing it so that now the wife will be very happy, and so now then, there'll be more, intimate interaction. Like that. So it's a matter of, it's just, this is what he's supposed to do. Right? Does that make sense? But it doesn't mean it's cold, because it has to be, emotionally sincere. Right? Otherwise, ladies are very sensitive to, how you say, external duties with no, in other words, if the guna and karma don't match, they know it. Like that. Does that make sense? So therefore, that's engaging the senses in the fire of the senses. Well, the other one is not worrying about it, either controlling the senses or being indifferent to whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
As you mentioned that everybody should come to the stage of this mentality of sannyas at some stage, and if it takes, then they have to go into the physical situation of sannyas to develop that. So if somebody was having the mentality of sannyas while situated in Grihastha ashram, although he might be indifferent from the things, he has to act in a way as if he's not indifferent.
Means, okay, so he's sannyasa mentality, but the point is, what do you mean act as though he's not different? But why is he doing the activities?
Because he's in the situation he has to do.
Yeah, so it's his duties, so he's doing it, so therefore it won't look that way.
Yeah,
right? It means the guy sits down at dinner, his wife just cooked, and that. So can he be renounced? Yeah, not worry about sense gratification.
Well, he has to eat.
He has to eat, and?
Speak
speak about it what way?
in a nice way.
Yeah, and so, but to speak about it in a nice way means he would have had to have first enjoyed it. So that means he has to engage the senses.
Okay.
You understand? So it has to be done. But he's doing it not because he wants to eat nice things, because this is what you're supposed to do. Like that. And that won't be a problem. Because one will say, oh, well, that would be dry. No, it'll only be dry if one doesn't understand the duties and what one's doing. Actually, and so, in other words, if it's only sense gratification, then the woman will appreciate it, but she'll be in control. Right? So then she'll be dissatisfied because of that. Right? Because the point is the woman always wants to be endeavoring for control, but never actually get it. You know what I'm saying? Like that. So she has the control of the situation, but she knows ultimately she doesn't have it. Because it's something to strive for. So if the guy is simply involved because of the senses, then she is in control. It loses interest real fast. It gets boring very fast. Now, let's say he's trying to just do it, but he doesn't have the right mentality, then she's not going to be satisfied, because then it will be pretending. So then if he's pretending, then he may be pretending in everything. So what is real in the relationship? Do they actually even have a relationship? Like this, you can have a total nuclear meltdown in 3 nanoseconds from this, right? Sorry. So then we have this third level where he is doing it because it's the duties, and it's for Krishna, and that so sincerely is taking care of these devotees. It means the jiva that's in the form of his wife is conditioned to think she's a wife. And so he's taking care as a wife that she's nicely taken care of according to how Krishna does, because she actually belongs to Krishna, right? Because in the wedding it says this girl belongs to Vishnu. Right? So he's taking care very nicely. But he's doing everything, he's actually tasting, he's actually appreciating. But at the same time, it's because of that element of sannyas, and it has the thing of its full emotion, full everything, but at the same time there's something beyond. You understand? So then that makes it where the woman has that element of the control, but at the same time is there something more. That leaves it where then there's always an interest. Yes?
What is his mentality at this point? Sannyas or grihastha?
It's a grihastha, but we're talking about sannyas, meaning that the result is for Krishna, not for himself. That's what we're talking about. Means it's the consciousness of sannyas, the mentality of sannyas, but he's still properly performing his grihastha duties. So he's a good grihastha. But that will keep, then the woman will be the most attracted, because it's always something new, fresh. It's something she can't grasp. Yes, yes. Means spiritually it means its consciousness is that of sannyas, but at the same time as the mentality, it matches perfectly the duties. So the guna and karma is correct, but the consciousness is sannyas. Okay? So that will be the most attractive to the women. Because they have control and they're being appreciated for it, but at the same time they don't. So they know it's only out of that kindness that it's there. It's out of consideration that control is there. So then they'll feel the most comfortable on one level, but they know that something's beyond. So that will inspire them towards the spiritual. Because the material is perfectly taken care of. So what's the beyond? Right.
So is that the same sort of relationship as between Krishna and his devotees, that he's in control, but because of the love of his devotees, he allows them to take a position of control in the relationship?
Yes. It's the same thing. It means that's the actual masculine feminine dynamic. So that's what we're saying is devotee's mistake is that, then you have to be very renounced and that, you just eat, and don't say anything. And if that's Maya to tell your wife it was good or to taste it and all this. It's a brahmachari. Wow, hey, this is great. Like that, but it's grihastha. These are all pretenders, like that. So, so that's the mistake because that is the impersonalism. That you think that spiritual means the opposite. So we can't understand is the guy can there eat the meal, appreciate it, tell his wife how great it is, and sincerely mean it, at the same time as he's doing all that, not for his wife, not for himself, but for Krishna. You know what I'm saying? The wife benefits because she's taken care of as her conditioned nature as a woman is taken care of. But at the same time as the consideration is spiritual. So that's really attending to the real needs of himself, his wife, and his family. Like that. So it's a different level. So that's why Yudhishthira and this and that, there's no consideration. No one will say, he's a Vishayi. But he's involved in all these different activities, but that's the consciousness is sannyas. So therefore he's a perfect grihastha and perfect king. Like that. In a sense of that's what we're talking about. But people are worried that it's something different going over the time. Okay. Strange. It's supposed to. There we go. Okay, you have to excuse me. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.